The day Darius Coleman signed those divorce papers, people thought they were watching a broken man surrender. They were wrong. They were watching a man keep a secret. And sometimes, silence looks a lot like defeat until it turns into power. Before we get into this story about betrayal, pride, and the kind of revenge life writes better than people ever could, don't forget to subscribe to Grown Tales, because some lessons don't come from success. They come from humiliation, and Darius learned both. Nobody in the private terminal that afternoon understood why he looked so calm. Not his wife Vanessa, not the three women standing beside her laughing like they had front row seats to a funeral. Not even the attorney sliding papers across the polished black table, especially not them, because all they saw was a man signing away a marriage. They didn't know he was signing away a performance. And there's a difference. Darius lowered his pen, flipped the last page, and wrote his name in slow, deliberate strokes. Vanessa smiled, not a warm smile, a victory smile, the kind somebody wears when they think they won. She folded her arms and tilted her head. "Thought you'd fight harder than this," she said. Her friends laughed. Darius looked up, didn't answer, just stared. Because when somebody has spent years misunderstanding you, sometimes explanation becomes wasted breath. And Darius had stopped wasting breath a long time ago. 5 years earlier, nobody would have imagined this ending. Back then, Darius was the quiet husband in South Atlanta everybody respected. Not flashy, not loud, didn't wear labels, didn't perform wealth. He fixed things, worked long hours, kept old habits from growing up with a father who taught him. Real money whispers. His dad, Leon Coleman, had said that every Sunday after church while polishing his old pickup truck. Darius never forgot it. Even after Leon died, even after life shifted, even after Vanessa started wanting a life louder than the one they built. At first, she loved his discipline, said his calm made her feel safe, said she'd never met a man who moved like he had nothing to prove. Back then, she admired his old watch, his practical shoes, his refusal to brag. Later, those same things embarrassed her. Funny how love can turn somebody's strengths into insults. The cracks started small. Dinner, comments, little jokes. Darius too cheap to buy bottled water. Darius thinks rich people are corny. He still drives that old truck like it got family memories. People laughed. He laughed too. At first. Then he noticed Vanessa didn't joke with him. She joked about him. Difference. Big difference. She started hanging with people obsessed with appearances. Brunch circles. Influencer wives. Folks who treated struggle like a contagious disease. People who mistook luxury for identity. And Vanessa changed around them. Her voice sharpened. Her patience shortened. Everything became comparison. Why don't we vacation like them? Why you don't wear designer? Why don't you expand? Why you always act small? Small. That word sat in Darius' chest because he knew something she didn't. What looked small was often hidden. See, after Leon died, Darius inherited something. Not just money. Responsibility. Assets hidden behind family trusts. Aviation holdings, logistics routes, real estate, and something nobody, not even Vanessa, fully understood. A privately owned jet charter company his father quietly built over decades. Old black money, invisible money. Money that didn't need applause. But Leon had left one condition: never reveal everything to people who only love what money can buy. Darius used to think that warning was old man paranoia until marriage taught him otherwise. So he stayed silent. He lived modestly, tested character, observed, protected, especially Vanessa, and lately what he saw hurt. One humid summer night, she came home late. Perfume unfamiliar, voice sweet in that artificial way people get when guilt walks in first. She kissed his cheek. "You still awake?" He looked up from paperwork. "Yeah." She glanced at the aviation ledgers. "What is all that?" "Business stuff. You and these mystery businesses." She laughed, but her eyes searched, measuring, suspicious, curious. He closed the folder. Something in him tightened, not because she asked, because she only asked when she sensed value, and that frightened him. Weeks later, his cousin Malik pulled him aside at a cookout. Malik didn't sugarcoat. "Bruh, your wife talks reckless." Darius paused. "Oh, what you mean?" "She acts like she married beneath herself." Silence. Kids running through sprinklers. Old school music playing. Barbecue smoke in the air. Life continuing while truth rearranged him. Malik leaned closer. "You know I don't do gossip, but watch who claps when you fall." That line stayed with him. Watch who claps when you fall. Because some people don't wait for your downfall. They rehearse for it. Things escalated. Vanessa started disappearing emotionally before physically. Late nights, cold shoulders, arguments over nonsense. One night, she exploded. "You move through life like a man afraid to be great." Darius stared. Afraid? He almost laughed. She had no idea who he was. No idea. That hurt worse than betrayal. Being unseen by someone sleeping beside you. That kind of loneliness changes people. Then came the dinner, the one that changed everything. Vanessa insisted he join her friends at an upscale restaurant. The whole meal became subtle humiliation. One friend asked what he did. Before he could answer, Vanessa smirked. "Oh, Darius does his little business stuff." Little. Again. Her friend laughed. "So basically he mysterious unemployed?" Table laughter. Darius sipped water. Calm. But inside, doors closing. Because disrespect repeated is no accident. It's intention. That night, he drove home in silence. Vanessa, scrolling her phone, didn't even notice his hands gripping the wheel. When they got home, he sat in darkness long after she slept, and finally admitted something hard. His marriage was surviving on memory, not truth. Months later, Vanessa asked for divorce, coldly, like canceling a subscription. "I need a man with ambition." That sentence nearly made him smile. If irony made sound, it would have thundered. But he just nodded. "When do you want to file?" She blinked, almost disappointed he didn't break. People often get confused when calm refuses drama. She expected begging, fighting, maybe tears. Instead, acceptance. And that unsettled her, because control loses power when resistance disappears. Then she made one strange demand. She wanted the paper signed at a private airport lounge. Said symbolism mattered. Said she was moving upward. Darius almost asked whether arrogance had always sounded this foolish, but didn't. He agreed, because by then he was watching something unfold, not reacting, watching and waiting. The morning of the signing, Darius arrived early. The black jet, sat beyond the glass, silent, massive, familiar. His father used to bring him here as a boy, teach him aircraft numbers, routes, ownership structures, dreams hidden inside discipline. Now that same jet stood behind divorce papers. Life had jokes. The pilot walked past, nodded respectfully. "Morning, Mr. Coleman." Vanessa didn't catch it. Neither did her friends. But Darius noticed, and so did the attorney. Interesting, very interesting. Then came the laughter, the image everybody would remember. Women in black dresses, luxury handbags, mocking smiles. Vanessa, standing like she had conquered something, and Darius signing. People watching from terminal lounges probably assumed tragedy. But there was something odd. He looked too composed, too certain, like a man following a script only he had read. Vanessa leaned over the table. "After today, don't call me when life humbles you." Her friends laughed again. Darius capped his pen, then finally spoke, soft, measured. "Life already humbled me." She frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" He stood, buttoned his jacket, looked at her for a long second. "Means I learned who celebrates losing me." Her smile flickered, only for a second, but he saw it. A crack, tiny, important. Then he walked off, just like that. No drama, no speech, and somehow that unsettled them more. But what Vanessa didn't know, that wasn't the real shock waiting. The real shock came 3 days later, when she learned the little business stuff she mocked was connected to something she had stood laughing in front of. The jet, the terminal, much more. But even that wasn't the twist, because the twist wasn't money. It was why Darius let her believe he had none. Meanwhile, Darius drove to a quiet neighborhood in Decatur to see Miss Loretta, his father's oldest friend. Woman practically raised him. She sat on the porch, shelling peas, looked at him once, and knew. "You signed?" He nodded. She sighed. Pain make folks reveal themselves. He sat beside her. For a while, neither spoke. Then she said, "Your daddy used to say wealth don't test character nearly as much as hidden wealth." Darius looked over. She smiled. "You finally understand him now." He did, more than ever. But something else troubled him. Why had Vanessa pushed so hard for that airport signing? Why there? Why in front of that jet? Too specific, too theatrical, too calculated. And the question bothered him, because Darius trusted instincts, and his instincts whispered there was more. That night, he reviewed old documents, call logs, financial notices, then noticed something strange. Requests made against one trust, access attempts, unauthorized inquiries, repeated. Somebody had been searching, quietly, for months. His jaw tightened. This wasn't just a broken marriage. This might be something else, something arranged. And suddenly, that laugh at the airport sounded different, not cruel, confident, like people expecting a bigger win. He called Malik. "You free?" "For you? Yeah. Need help checking something." By midnight, they were piecing together threads. Vanessa's new friends, connections, a man funding her boutique venture, questions around aviation shares. Then Malik froze. What? You know who this dude is?" Silence. Darius leaned closer and felt cold, because the name on the screen wasn't random. It tied back to his father. Old business rivalry, old wounds, things Leon never fully explained. Suddenly, The divorce looked less personal and more strategic, like somebody had used heartbreak as entry. Darius sat back, mind racing. Who exactly had he married? And what had she been sent to find? For the first time in years, he felt anger. Real anger. Not loud, cold, focused, dangerous. Because betrayal from love wounds one way. Betrayal tied to deception, that transforms. And yet, he said almost nothing. Just, don't tell anybody. Malik nodded. What you gonna do? Darius stared at the screen. Watch. Sometimes the strongest move isn't striking. It's letting people keep believing they're ahead. Meanwhile, Vanessa celebrated, posting cryptic captions online. Freedom, leveling up, soft life. People congratulating her. Her friends gossiping. They all thought she had escaped an ordinary man. But she kept checking something, waiting, as if expecting news. Money, maybe. Control, maybe. Something. And when it didn't come, her confidence started thinning. Because greed gets impatient, and impatience exposes motives. Then came the phone call, 4 days after the divorce. Private number, Darius answered. A woman's voice. Professional. Urgent. Mr. Coleman, there's been an inquiry regarding Aircraft Transfer Authority. His face hardened. By who? Pause. Then a name. Vanessa. He said nothing. But inside, pieces locked. This had never been about leaving. It was about access. And suddenly, he remembered her watching those folders, asking about business, the airport demand, the mocking confidence. It all connected. His father had seen this kind of thing coming decades ago and built safeguards. But Vanessa didn't know that. Whoever was guiding her didn't know that. And now they had made a move, which meant the game had begun. That evening, Darius returned alone to the airport, sat inside the jet, ran his hand over leather seats his father once sat in, memory and strategy mixing. The pilot approached. You okay, sir? Darius looked out the window, then asked quietly, Tell me something. Yes, sir. If somebody thinks they stole a kingdom, he paused, a half smile forming. What happens when they realize they only touched the gate? The pilot chuckled. Depends how patient the king is. Darius leaned back, and for the first time since signing those papers, he smiled, because humiliation was beginning to look like camouflage. And maybe that had always been its purpose. But while he sat there planning, Vanessa was meeting someone in secret, a man she had told nobody about, the same man tied to Leon's old rival. And sliding a folder across a restaurant table, she whispered, He signed everything. The man looked inside, then slowly frowned. No, Vanessa blinked. What? He looked up, voice suddenly tense. These aren't divorce papers protecting you. Silence. What are they? He swallowed, then said words that drained the color from her face. They protect him. And in that moment, for the first time, Vanessa realized she may not have divorced an ordinary husband. She may have walked into a trap she didn't understand. And across the city, Darius's phone buzzed. Unknown message. One sentence. Your father didn't die over inheritance. He died over betrayal. Darius froze, heart pounding, stared at the message. Then another arrived. And your ex-wife knows more than she told you. He stood inside the darkened jet, everything changing. Marriage, inheritance, his father's death. Maybe none of it was what he believed. And just as he whispered, What did my father leave me in the middle of? The cockpit lights suddenly powered on by themselves, and someone stepped out from the rear cabin. A voice from the shadows said, "About time you started asking." For a moment, Darius thought grief had finally cracked his mind, because the voice coming from the rear cabin belonged to a ghost, or at least a man he had buried in memory. Uncle Reggie? The older man stepped forward from shadow wearing the same measured expression. He had carried all Darius's life. Reginald Brooks, his father's closest friend, former aviation lawyer, supposedly retired, supposedly gone, and yet here, inside the jet, waiting. Darius stood frozen. "I thought you moved to Louisiana." Reggie gave a dry smile. That's what people needed to think. Needed. That word landed heavy. Nothing about tonight felt accidental anymore. Darius felt the floor of his old reality shifting. "What is this?" Reggie motioned for him to sit. "No," Darius said. "Tell me what's happening." Reggie studied him, then nodded. "Your father knew they'd come through family." Silence. "What?" "The people trying to touch these assets now," he leaned in, "have been circling since before you got married." A pulse pounded in Darius' ears. Everything in him wanted to reject it, but too many puzzle pieces suddenly fit. The rival businessman, Vanessa's inquiries, the airport stunt, the message. This wasn't random betrayal. This was pressure years in the making. Reggie spoke low. "Your father built more than wealth." "What did he build?" "A protection network." Darius stared. "You talking like a movie." Reggie shook his head. "No, son." He looked around the cabin. "I'm talking black men who learned a long time ago that when you build quietly, people come trying to take it." That hit different, because it sounded like history. Not paranoia. Inheritance. Not just money. Memory. Defense. Survival. Black wealth protected in silence. Passed like code. And suddenly, Darius understood something painful. His father hadn't hidden things because he lacked trust. He hid things because he knew what greed does. Reggie slid an old folder across the table. Inside, letters, trust structures, flight ownership layers, handwritten notes from Leon. Then one line underlined, "Never confuse a test of loyalty with punishment." Darius swallowed hard. He knew Vanessa. He suspected her. That hurt, even now, because part of Darius still wanted his marriage to have been merely broken, not engineered, not used. Reggie watched him wrestle, then said, "Listen carefully." He lowered his voice. "Vanessa may have entered your life for reasons neither of you fully understood." Darius frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means people can be manipulated before they become willing." That changed something. Because suddenly, Vanessa wasn't only villain, maybe also pawn, and moral certainty got complicated, which is how real life works. Messy, layered, no easy heroes, no easy enemies. The next morning, Darius did something unexpected. He called Vanessa. She answered, guarded. "What do you want?" "To talk." Silence. Then, "Why?" "Because I think somebody played both of us." Long pause. He heard her breathing shift. Fear. Not anger. Fear. "Where?" "Same airport." She laughed nervously. "Seriously?" "Same airport." "Fine." She arrived alone. No friends. No victory smile. No black dress. Just Vanessa. Tired. Unsteady. Human again. Funny how truth strips performance. She sat across from him. Wouldn't meet his eyes. finally whispered, "I didn't know." Darius studied her. Didn't know what? That they were using me. There it was. Confession without defense. He said nothing. Let silence do work. Then she told him. Years earlier, her failing fashion startup had been quietly financed by a man she thought believed in her, the rival. He fed insecurity, encouraged resentment, whispered Darius was hiding things, made suspicion feel empowerment, step by step, pressure disguised as support, and over time, poison became logic. Vanessa looked shattered saying it. I thought I was proving I deserved more. She laughed bitterly. I was being handled. Darius felt anger, but also something sadder. Pity, because pride had made her easy to use, and pride often does. He asked one question. Did you ever love me? Tears hit before words. Yes, raw, immediate, painfully true. And somehow that hurt more. Because betrayal with no love is simple. Betrayal mixed with love? Complicated. Then she said something unexpected. There's something you don't know about your father. Darius's body went still. She slid a flash drive across the table. He wanted this. Who? The man behind all this. Why give it to me? Because I was wrong. She finally looked him in the eye, and I'm done being wrong. That night, Darius and Malik watched the files, recorded meetings, financial schemes, attempts to absorb aviation holdings, and something explosive. Evidence Leon Coleman didn't die naturally. Room went silent. Malik whispered, D, but Darius barely heard him. His whole life split. His father hadn't merely warned him. He'd been protecting him from something unfinished. And now it had come back. Through marriage, through inheritance, through old enemies. Everything personal was suddenly historical. Reggie called. You have two options. What? Fight legally. Pause. Or make them expose themselves. Darius asked, how? Reggie smiled. By giving greedy people what they can't resist. Opportunity. 2 weeks later, invitations went out. Private aviation acquisition event. Elite buyers. Press. Investors. And hidden among them, the rival. Certain he was about to secure what Leon once denied him. Vanessa agreed to help, not for redemption speeches, not theatrics, just accountability. And maybe because consequences teach what apologies can't. The night of the event felt electric. Old Atlanta money, new money, executives, pilots, lawyers. The same black jet gleaming under lights. Symbol transformed. Darius stepped to the stage. Tailored suit, quiet authority. No longer hiding, no longer shrinking himself to comfort people. And yet, still unmistakably himself. He spoke calmly. Some people think ownership is what you can seize. A pause. My father taught me ownership begins with what you can protect. Murmurs. Then he announced a historic restructuring. The aviation empire wasn't being sold. It was becoming a black-owned cooperative investment group for underserved young pilots and entrepreneurs. Gasps. Shock. The rival stood, furious. This is fraud. Darius looked at him. No. Then screens lit. Evidence. Transfers. Conspiracy. Recorded conversations, including the rival recruiting Vanessa. Room exploded. Security moved. Federal investigators stepped forward. Turns out, Reggie had arranged more than strategy. He'd arranged timing. The rival shouted, threatened, collapsed into panic, greed unraveling in public, and irony. He lost everything, chasing what he thought Darius didn't understand he owned. Justice doesn't always arrive dramatic. Sometimes it arrives documented. Afterward, press wanted statements. Darius gave none. He wasn't feeding spectacle, because healing doesn't need headlines. Outside the hangar, Vanessa approached, wind moving through the runway lights. She looked small somehow, not in stature, in certainty. She said, "I laughed while you signed those papers." Darius nodded. She cried. "I'll hate that forever," he answered gently. Pain teaches. She looked confused. "You forgive me?" he thought carefully. Forgiveness isn't pretending. Then, "But I won't let betrayal decide who I become." She broke down, and there, beneath the same jet that once framed humiliation, stood two people facing what pride had destroyed. No reunion, no dramatic rekindling. Life isn't always that neat. Some damage changes shape but stays real. But there was truth, and sometimes truth is the most mercy people get. Months passed. The aviation cooperative launched. Young black students learning to fly. Scholarships in Leon Coleman's name. A dream made larger through attempted theft. That's life's irony. Sometimes what attacks your legacy expands it. Darius visited one training day, watched a teenage girl step from a cockpit, grinning ear to ear. She asked, "Mr. Coleman, why'd you build this?" He smiled. "Because somebody once hid a future for me." She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. Malik later joked, "Bruh, your ex tried to steal a jet and accidentally funded a movement." Darius laughed harder than he had in years, because it was absurd and true. Justice sometimes has humor. One evening, he sat on Miss Loretta's porch again. Same peas, same summer air. She asked, "So what you learn?" He leaned back, thought about betrayal, his father, Vanessa, secrets, pain, then said, "I learned quiet people ain't weak." Loretta smiled. "What else?" He looked toward sunset. "That sometimes what feels like losing," pause, "is protection." She nodded, like she knew all along. Probably did. Old folks often do. And Vanessa, she rebuilt too. Not glamorous, not online. Real rebuilding, harder kind. Started mentoring women about financial manipulation and emotional coercion, turning shame into warning. That mattered because